The mid-19th century was a horrific time of racial segregation and racial movements. That was until 9 African American students broke barriers when they became the first black students to integrate white schools. Years before the Little Rock Nine took center stage, African Americans began fighting for equal rights. Slavery was abolished during the Civil War in 1865, but soon after the war, laws were put into place that segregated African Americans. Especially in the South, black people did not have the same rights as white people. They were not allowed in many hotels, and they were forced to use separate and broken down facilities. They were forced to ride in the back of buses, and they were expected to give up their seat to white passengers if a bus was full. African Americans who did not follow the rules were fined or even arrested. They lost their jobs. Many were even attacked and murdered. A Supreme Court case in 1896, Plessy v. Ferguson, made the unfair laws and treatment possible. The Supreme Court's decision in the case stated that it was legal to, quote, provide equal but separate accommodations for the white and black races. Civil rights activists fought to get segregation laws overturned for years. In the 1930s, activists turned their attention to education. Black and white schools all over the South were very unequal. Black schools often did not have reliable school buses or current textbooks. They also did not have enough playground space or equipment in classes. The Supreme Court addressed this situation in the 1954 Brown v. the Board of Education case. In the ruling, Chief Justice Earl Warren wrote, quote, in the field of public education, the statement of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The decision made desegregation mandatory in public schools. After the Little Rock School Board announced its integration plan, about 80 black students applied to attend Central High School, though many of those students were forced to reconsider. Business owners told black employees they would lose their jobs if their children tried to attend Central. By the winter of 1955-1956, just 33 black students were willing to attend white schools, but the threats continued. Superintendent Virgil Blossom told the black students they would face incredible stress. He also said they would not be able to participate in after-school activities such as sports teams or bands. Regardless of Blossom's warnings, 10 students were chosen to integrate Central. Little did they know that soldiers would have to walk them to their classes. Ernest Green was the only 12th grader in the group. Terrence Roberts, Elizabeth Eckford, Minnie Brown, Thelma Mothershed, Gloria Ray, and Melba Patillo were in the 11th grade. Jefferson Thomas, Carletta Walls, and Jane Hill were 10th graders. Jane decided to attend another school after the students were denied entry into the school on September 4th. That left 9 students to continue the fight for integration. Students had good reason for wanting to attend Central High. They knew that a diploma from Central, a highly respected school, could lead to college or better jobs. Ernest Green said later in life, quote, we wanted to widen options later in life for ourselves and later for our children. But while the students were preparing to integrate, other people were gearing up to stop it.
I will not force my people to integrate against their will.
The governor of the state, Orville Faubus, decided that he was going to use Central as his point of resistance. None of us of the 9 anticipated that the resistance would be as strong as it was. The night before we were to go to school, the governor called out the Arkansas National Guard, unbeknownst to us. And when we appeared at Central the first day, the National Guard was there to bar our entrance and let white students go into the school.
On September 4th, 1957, the black students arrived at Central. A mob greeted them with spit and screams, but it wasn't the mob that kept the students out of the school. Governor of Arkansas, Orville Faubus, had ordered the National Guard to keep the students out. Faubus claimed that, quote, it will not be possible to maintain order and protect the lives and the property of our citizens if forcible integration is carried out. The school board asked the court to delay integration. The students did not return until September 23rd. That day, about 1,000 protesters gathered in front of Central High School.
What about you, sir? Do you think the colored students will show up?
If I got anything to do with it, they won't show up. Well, I think it's a breaking point of the school integration. I just don't feel that they have a right to go to school.
The students made their way through the threatening crowd. A newspaper report from the next day described the events. quote, by 12 o'clock, the mob had reached its greatest strength, and by now completely ignored local police. The crowd remained behind a barricade, but it did not maintain order. Several newsmen were attacked and beaten. A black reporter was kicked and manhandled. Finally, an officer made an announcement. At about noon, he said the black students had been removed from the school. Later in life, Gloria Ray said that the students left Central after only a few hours because of the mob outside. For Ray, it was, quote, the most horrifying experience I had ever had in my life. You could hear the mob, and it was getting louder and louder. The situation in Little Rock was out of control. President Dwight Eisenhower had been watching the events at Central closely. After the dangerous scene on September 23rd, school officials told the Little Rock Nine not to come to school the next day. Eisenhower took action. Quote, I will use the full power of the United States, including whatever force may be necessary, to carry out the orders of the federal court, Eisenhower said in an announcement to the nation.
And it becomes necessary for the executive branch of the federal government to use its powers and authority to uphold federal courts. The President's responsibility is inescapable. In accordance with that responsibility, I have today issued an executive order directing the use of troops under federal authority to aid in the execution of federal law at Little Rock, Arkansas. This became necessary when my proclamation of yesterday was not observed, and the obstruction of justice still continues.
And we each had a bodyguard, and they marched us in, as you've seen on some of the videos, to be our protectors, basically.
On September 24th, about 1,200 Army troops took up positions around Central High School. The next morning, they brought the Little Rock Nine to school. Minjean Brown was overcome with emotion. The fact that the president took action so she could attend school had a powerful impact on her. Quote, for the first time in my life, she said, I feel like an American citizen. Crowds continued to protest at Central every day. The people shouted sayings such as 2468, we don't want to integrate, at the Little Rock Nine. Inside the school, each of the students was verbally and physically attacked. Ernest Green said going to school every day was like going into a battle. The violence and attacks continued throughout the school year. Minjean Brown was expelled from Central for standing up to her bullies. Before she left, she said, quote, I don't think people will realize what really goes on at Central. They throw rocks, spill ink on your clothes, and they just keep bothering you every 5 minutes. But none of the Little Rock Nine quit. On May 27, 1958, Ernest Green became the first African American to graduate from Central High. Almost no one in the audience clapped for him when he received his diploma, but it did not matter to him. Quote, nobody clapped, but I figured they didn't need to, because after I got that diploma, that was it. I had accomplished what I came there for. The Little Rock Nine paved the way for me and my friends of all races to attend the same school. I'm thankful for all 9 of the students of the Little Rock Nine and for their bravery.
Our completion, our success of we completed our task, and that if you do that sort of thing, you too can complete whatever dream you might have. It's about understanding who you are and what you are about and what you believe in. And if you feel that you're in the right will rule, and everything should come out on the right side.